Once I come up with 4 really good sketches for my concentric shapes, my shifting shapes, my stable shapes, and my moving shapes, I can go ahead and pick the best composition and fill that in with color, which is going to help me when it comes time to mix my paints. So if you flip over your worksheet to the back side of this worksheet talks about the colors that you are going to choose. Each of you is going to get 3 cups of paint. Okay? These 3 cups are going to contain your main colors for your painting. They can be 2 warm colors, so we're thinking of reds, oranges, and yellows, or they could be cool colors, which would be blues and purples and greens for cool. So you can do 2 warms paired with 1 cool, or you can pick 2 cool colors paired with 1 warm. On your paint palette, you're going to be able to add black and white, so you can make any tint or shade of the 3 colors that you choose for your cups. You also have the option of scooping out some of your cup paint and putting it into your palette and then mixing those together. So I could take 2 cup paints, mix them together to get a 3rd color on my palette. So for my particular sketch, I chose to do 2 of the warm colors. I decided to do the processed red, which is kind of like pink, and I'm doing the yellow ochre, which is a yellow, and then my 3rd color, so these are my 2 warms, and my 3rd color is going to be blue violet. So I've got 2 warms and a cool. As you can see right here, I did a little test for those colors. Those are going to be my 3 main cup colors. And then on my palette, if I scooped out a little bit of the magenta and the yellow, I could technically get an orange. So I'm going to add orange to my mix, okay? On my palette, I'm also going to be able to add black and white. So I can make a tint or a shade of any of these colors for my painting. So you can see I've added a little bit of black, I've added a little bit of white to some of these colors. I've also changed my pressure. So while I was filling this in with my colors, some of these areas I pressed hard, and some of these areas I used a lighter touch to signify that this is going to be a tint, this is going to be a shade. I also tried to experiment with my warm colors in the middle here with the overlapping. I think it got a little bit congested here, so when I actually do the physical painting part, I may go in and do a little bit more thinking instead of just filling in those colors. Now that I've decided that this is the one that I'm going to do, I need to go ahead and grab a canvas. And I need some rulers. I'm going to need a pencil. I'm going to need an eraser so that I can try to sketch this design onto my. There are 2 sides to this canvas. One is a very bright white that has a slight layer of gesso on this. Gesso is like a thick white paint that prevents the colors you're going to put on top, the acrylics, to soak through. The other side of this canvas is almost more of like an off-white natural fiber color. And this is a flimsy canvas. It's literally fabric canvas that we're going to be painting on. So you want to make sure that you are doing your sketches on the bright white side. What you can do though is flip it over onto the off-white side and go ahead and write your name and your class period. You could even write like 2020 on here so that when you're older, in your late 30s, you know when you painted this painting. Okay, so I put my name on the back. I am now ready to start sketching out my design. So it might not be a terrible idea to kind of start right here with this center point, because really everything kind of radiates out from that center point. So I'm going to try to figure out where I want this on my canvas. So to me, it's to the left-hand side, because if I break this in half, you can see, so it is in the top left quadrant of this canvas. So I'm gonna go to the left and then up a little bit. So I'm gonna say that my particular center point for this canvas is right about here. So I'm gonna go ahead and try to make all of my lines from there. So I can see that this goes up to the corner. And I'm gonna draw light just in case I need to erase. I'm using a ruler, number 2 pencil. Got an eraser here in case I need to use it. Those are found in the card catalog. The rulers live underneath the TV. I'm gonna switch to a shorter ruler here so I can kind of see what I'm doing. Okay, so I've started with this triangle right here. And maybe I'll come down. This one is a little bit on an angle. And again, I'm drawing light so that in case I need to erase, I can. Now that I have everything mapped out, I was able to create a template out of this chipboard so that I could trace that same rectangle because I was having issues trying to measure it out and it was just taking too much time. So stopping and making a template for me was a really good idea. So now I need to go ahead and I need to take my sketch sheet and my colored pencils over to the paints so that I can start mixing the colors that I want to use. All right, I've got my paints right here. I moved them to this table so that you guys can watch the mixing that's going to happen. So I've got my 3 paint cups. I've got my colors that I'm trying to mix. So my first one, I'm going to make this kind of golden warm yellow color. So I'm going to start with a few pumps of yellow. Okay, so I've got a little bit of yellow going on here. And then I am going to, I need to make it a little bit of a golden yellow. So I'm actually going to add just a tiny bit of the warm red. Now, when you mix or stir these colors, it's important to use the back end of the paintbrush, just to use as like a little stirrer here. Okay, and I've added a little too much red, so I'm actually going to add some more yellow to kind of tone it down because it's a little bit too orangey for my liking. So I'm going to add a little bit more yellow to this. And this should do it once I get this all mixed up. A couple reasons why we use the back end of the paintbrush for mixing. First of all, it's easy cleanup. So all I really need to do is take a piece of paper towel after I'm done fully mixing this. You really want to scrape the edges of that container and the bottom because we're going for even color distribution on our paintings. And any kind of little bits that you missed in the mixing process are going to show up when you start putting this down onto your canvas. So take a little bit of time and really get this fully mixed. So we use the end of the paintbrush because it's easier for cleanup. All I need to do is scrape the excess off into the container like so. So this color's ready to go. I can put the lid tightly on top, save that color. I can grab some paper towel. And I can just go ahead and wipe that paint off. So it's easy cleanup and it has saved my bristles from mashing them into this paint and just getting them caked full of paint, and taking about 3 minutes or so to wash this brush. Okay, so I've got my golden yellow. That looks pretty good. I think next I'm going to try to mix my process red. So this color to me is a little bit more on the cool side. So I'm going to go ahead and add the cool red. And I'm going to need a little bit of white to this to make it a pink value. So again, I'm using the back end of my paintbrush and I am stirring this paint together. One other thing to think about, when you are mixing these colors, the color in the cup is actually going to come out a bit darker than it will, or I'm sorry, a bit lighter than it will when it is on your canvas. So right now I really love this pink color, but I know it's going to dry a little bit darker than this. So I'm actually going to add in a tiny bit more white, just because I know it's going to dry more of the color that it was in that cup. So if your colors look a little bit dark in the mixing cups, lighten them, because they're actually going to get even darker once you start painting them on your canvas. So that's a little trick of the trade, so that you guys hopefully don't have to make that mistake like I have several times in the past. When you're mixing these, you also want to make sure that you have enough paint for your entire painting. So I specifically didn't do a ton of pink, because if you look at my sketch sheet, I actually don't have a lot of pink going on in my sketch. Most of my color is actually that bluish purple. So I've only filled this maybe about a quarter. This one's not quite halfway full. Again, I'm going to use my paper towel and I'm just going to wiggle this clean, super clean. Okay, now I'm on to my bluish purple. So for me, I feel like the cool blue is going to work better than the warm blue. And again, my blue is the main part of my painting, so I'm going to try to pump this blue out so that I've got quite a bit of it and I don't need to remake this color. I think I'm going to have to go ahead and refill this blue. Okay, so now I've got to get it a little bit on the purpley side, so I'm going to add a little bit of the cool red, and I'm going to stir that together and see what happens. That's looking pretty good. Again, it's a little on the dark side, so I might actually add a little bit of white to this just to kind of bring that color back a little bit. It's a little bit dark for my liking. And I know that it's going to dry darker. So that's the thing you have to think about, is not what color necessarily is it in the cup, but what color is this going to dry to be. So I added a little bit of white to that, just to kind of tone that down. Notice how none of my colors are just right from the pump. It's not like I'm just using plain old yellow. I've got a golden yellow. Notice how I'm not just using cool blue. I'm using a bluish purple. And then I've got my kind of magenta color going on. So you want to make sure that you customize these at least a little bit. It's going to make your paintings look so much better. I'm going to add a little bit more of the red to this because I don't quite see the purple. Because remember, this is like a blue-violet color. There we go. Now I've got more of like a purple tone going on. So after I get these three colors totally mixed up, the next thing I can do is I can add black and white onto my palette. For me, I don't have a lot of tints, so I'm just going to add a little bit of white to my palette. I'm not going to use a lot of it. And then the black, same thing. Black, a little bit of black goes a long way. So I really don't need a lot of black on my palette, just a little bit to give these a different value. Okay, so I'm getting all of the excess paint off of my brush. There we go. And wipe clean. And there are my 3 paint colors. Done. Here I am, set up, ready to paint. I have decided that I'm actually going to start with my middle shape. So I'm going to do this yellow large shape right here. So I've already labeled it with a Y. The smart thing to do is actually erase that Y and erase any pencil lines that I don't want to show through my paint. This is going to be a lot easier to do before you paint than after. I have picked some paint brushes that are going to work really well for me since my lines are very straight. I am using these flat brushes here. So I've got a 3/4 of an inch, I've got a number 10, and I also grabbed a paintbrush that the number has wore off on, so I do not know the size of this one. It's really important when you guys get brushes to clean them first. So this one I can tell is brand spanking new. It is totally clean. This one feels a little crusty, so I can either take it to the sink and add some water and some soap and clean that, or I can kind of dip it in my water here and use my paper towel to kind of just make sure that that brush is completely clean. You cannot trust the people that use these brushes because not everybody cleans them really well. So now I can see that this brush, not only does it feel better, it's not as stiff, but the color is a little bit better. And then this one feels really good. I can tell that it's not dirty. It's actually just stained. So this one should be good to go. So I'm going to start painting my yellow spot right here. So I have to determine what brush I'm going to use. Probably not this really big one, just because I have some tiny areas. I might save this for the larger blue areas. So I think I'm actually going to go with the number 10. So I'm going to load my brush. I don't need a lot of paint because I'm trying to get that clean edge. So sometimes I even like to kind of just scrape a little bit of that paint off in the container. And then almost like I'm holding a pencil, I'm just going to kind of dip my paint on the canvas, and I like to kind of wiggle it up to that edge and then just kind of pull down. And I can always add a little bit more paint. I can already tell that this yellow is fairly transparent, so I'm going to have to do a couple coats of it. So be patient. You want a really nice clean line. I'm also going to rotate my brush here so that I can get that tip of that brush, that angled edge, right up next to that side there. It's just really important, the craftsmanship. Now that you guys are in high school, I have really high standards for your craftsmanship. So take your time. This is not a race. You want this to look really nice and professional. So I'm just lightly dipping my brush in. You can see I do not have a ton of paint. And especially when I get up to this little corner here, I want to make sure that my paint is not too thick so that it creates a big goop there. You can also, it might not be a bad idea, now that I'm over here, I'm going to rotate my canvas. So you guys can move that around because I'm much better kind of pulling down with my paint than trying to like kind of paint up. So I'm better doing it this way, so it's nice to rotate my canvas. So don't be afraid to kind of move that around, figure out your style of painting, and go with it. Everyone's a little bit different, so it's important to kind of find your style. I had a little black piece of something in my paint, so I just kind of got rid of that. Maybe a eraser shaving or something. And I'm just trying to kind of even out my color as I go. So I'm just kind of pushing my color so that it's nice and even. I'm going to go ahead and rotate again because I want to start painting this edge. So once I finish this yellow rectangle, I'm actually not going to paint the colors that are directly next to it. So I would not paint the dark blue, the light blue, the dark blue, the dark blue, the light blue, the maroon, the yellow, the orange, and the red, or I'm sorry, the orange. I got a little bit too far away there. Because they are touching or neighboring this yellow rectangle piece. If your colors are wet, and you try to paint next to them, a lot of times you accidentally bump into that color and it kind of blends together and it doesn't give you a nice, clean, flat edge. With these paintings, our goal is to actually create a clean, crisp edge with your paint. So if you're trying to paint with colors that are wet next to each other, you're not going to be able to achieve that goal. So make sure that you take some time. So after I finish this one, I may, because I already have yellow on my brush, I may go to my next yellow section, erase that, and then paint that yellow, just to save me a little bit of time in the cleaning process. And it just works because then I'm not doing, because none of my colors next to yellow would be yellow. So not only is it saving me time with cleaning my brush, but it's just a smart thing to do because the yellow isn't going to touch another yellow rectangle. Just a few things to keep in mind before you start working on your painting. While you're sketching onto your canvas, you might get some smudges from your pencil lead. Just use a pink eraser to erase that before you start painting. If you or when you have to start painting to the edge of your canvas, it's a good idea to put some paper towel or some newsprint onto the table with your painting on top. This will make for easy cleanup at the end of the class. And then my last little tip is use a brush that's appropriate for the size of the area that you're working on. So if you have a large area, please switch to a larger paintbrush. Not only will it save you time, but it'll make less brush strokes and it'll just look cleaner and more finished in the end.